Hey. All right. So in this video number 7, and I'm talking about the 7 deadly sins. The whole video, the whole point of these 8 videos is to establish a foundation for geopolitical Christianity. I don't know if I'm going to start a church or not. I don't know. I'll probably just become Orthodox. Who knows? But it would make a really great church. I'd love to preach the gospel of these, of the geopolitical thing. I think it'd be fun. It would be fun. I mean, I do this because I like it and I enjoy it, and I could see myself doing this for a while. If I don't want to do it anymore, I'll just stop doing it. But so anyway, in this video, we're going to talk about 7 deadly sins and why we must eschew evil. Geopolitical Christians are the civilized children of the Most High. This is the whole point of geopolitical Christianity: is the civilization of humanity. Okay, humans are not civilized. All right, and I know what they told me in school. No. People that want to keep you stupid, savage, struggling, suffering, scarce, slave, they're not going to tell you, hey, by the way, you're a savage, right? They're not going to say that. And I'm not saying you're a savage. I'm saying all of us are born civilized, okay? We know why we're here. We know where we're about. And again, we may not be able to communicate that. And this is one respect that we have of babies. I think babies are the best little monster being, cute little bundles of humanness. But they're and they are little savages. They're little kids. Little kids are savages, and they're just angels from heaven. But the thing is, we are perfect in our development for that age and stage. And so, if we get into adulthood and we do some of these things, this is a deadly sin, and this is where goes back to moral objectivism and an intrinsic sense of virtue. And you'll notice that all 7 of these sins, these are true sins. These are real sins, the real sins, not gluttony and sexual immorality, none of that stupid stuff. I mean, that's obviously a sin, but it's like, if you've got to tell someone that gluttony is a sin, that person's that's a savage. Like not in a positive way. That person is a dirty, unwashed savage. You got to tell a person, like, there's a box full of donuts, and this person will eat themselves into pain. There's something broken in their brain. Okay, so again, that goes back to moral objectivity or moral objectivism. But moral objectivity is like the act of being morally objective, I guess. Or maybe it's an adjective. Well, no, it's not an adjective. What would it be? Moral objectivity. Moral objectivity would be an adjective. Objectivity would be like it's a proper noun for a philosophy, maybe. Who knows? Say some comments if you're picking up on what I'm trying to put down. All right. So geopolitical Christians are the civilized children of the Most High. When humanity was civilized about 12, 13,000 years ago. And look, I know our science, where's the evidence of civilization back then? You got Göbekli Tepe, and the something we can't even do today. We can't see that. It's right in your face. And by the way, I've been to sites that are way older than Göbekli Tepe, more complex, far, like, just, there's so much stuff out there in the world. Y'all got to get out. And a lot of stuff some of the stuff you can't really find on YouTube. You got to just go there. You just have to go there. You have to go see it. And you're like, man, the people that did this, I went to a site, and it's in North America, and it's aligned with a certain constellation, and the last time the constellation was over that spot on our planet or whatever, the position of that constellation was over 10,000 BC. It's megalithic too. It's like some of the sites in China and Japan and India, and Ethiopia, and all over the world. And it's just like, we don't know who built that. We don't know who built that. Okay, so to say that people 12,000 years ago were not civilized, they clearly were. They clearly were. I'm not convinced that people today are civilized, because I'm saying en masse, like entire society. United States is the most civilized, I think, and then Europe, and or maybe Europe and the United States, but Europe and the United States. So these are the most civilized nations on Earth, and Europe's not a nation, but they function as a nation monetarily. So anyway, geopolitical Christianity is about civilizing humanity. There are a lot of us that are already civilized. If you're watching this, you're probably civilized, unless you're leaving nasty comments, then you're not civilized. See what I did there? So we avoid all appearances of sin and support for evil as geopolitical Christians, as apex humans. We avoid all appearance of sin, and we do not support evil. So what does that mean? What is evil and sin? How do you define that? Evil and sin are the fruits of an inferior human lifestyle. Evil and sin have ruled poverty, excuse me, evil and sin have ruled the poor and the savage human societies for millennia. Now, look, I don't have the book on me at the moment, but I will grab it since there's nobody in the chat. Never mind. Anyway, I bought a book that was written in the 1500s, mid 16th century, and it was written by a descendant of the Inca, like the actual Inca, the leadership of the Andean high culture. And he was like part of the aristocracy. His mother was part of the aristocracy. He was half Spanish. So he was mestizo. And he talks about how prior to the arrival of the Inca and the children of Taita Inti and Viracocha and all that, but right before they arrived, there were many tribes that were spread about, and they were really savage. Like they were eating their children, they were eating each other. Kind of what you see in perhaps, I'm sorry to say this, but in like places like Papua New Guinea and whatnot. You have people that are living in pretty difficult situations, and they are really in their behaviors very close to animals. They worshipped frogs, they did all these sorts of things, and they saw themselves as like, basically children of the frog. Like, oh, our people came from the frog god, and so they would worship the frog or the lizard god or the snake god or the caterpillar god or whatever. And again, I personally don't see anything wrong with honoring those divine creatures that God has created, but when you put them at a point and say that we are beneath them, then you start to behave in a way that makes them your master and them above you. I love animals. Love animals. I think they're the best thing that God has made, because I love watching them frolic and play and eat and hunt each other and all that stuff. I love watching it. It's amazing. It's so beautiful. But they're not above us. It's just like, people are afraid of the devil and Satan, but why would you be afraid of something that's beneath you? Okay, so you recognize its deadliness, I guess, but you don't fear it, and that's what evil and sin are. There are things in the world that you don't fear, but we do avoid all appearance of evil and sin. Okay, and so real evil and sin are are described in the following deadly sins, and these deadly sins I will describe. So there are 7 deadly sins that have infiltrated our great American Christian capitalist empire in the recent decades. Prior to 1950, these were not as common, but after 1950s, 1960s, we were going through a Cold War. The end of the Cold War was like not 1980s, but we were in a Cold War, and there was a psychological operation that took place that led to the downfall of the United States as the greatest empire on earth. And a big part of that is described here. And these are the 7 real deadly sins for us, apex humans, that we must at all costs avoid. Okay? So the 7 deadly sins are sacrifice. Never sacrifice anything ever. Okay? Now, people will say, well, what if my kid is in a car and the car's on fire and will I just let him burn up in there? Well, this is where you got to ask yourself this question. This is how you decide whether or not you're sacrificing. Is letting that kid burn up and scream and die worth you living without? Like, is it okay to watch that die for you? No. Okay, there you go. So it would be a sacrifice for you to let that child die. To run in there and risk getting burned is not a sacrifice. As a child, as a parent, you love them more than their absence. You're going to go and do what you have to do to save them. Okay? So that's not a sacrifice. Ayn Rand talks about this, and I love her portrayal of self-sacrifice and altruism. I love it because she says it is what savages do. And she's absolutely right. It's the idea that I must take of myself at my expense for you or for society or for some ideal. You never should. Ever, ever, ever. If you feel that society is more important than you, then it's not a sacrifice anymore. If you're giving of yourself to society because you feel that society is better than you, it's not a sacrifice anymore. Because you are giving, you are sacrificing a lesser value, which you have seen as yourself, for a higher value, which you see as society. In that case, it's not sacrifice. Sacrifice is any time that you give something of a higher value for a lower value. It's like when you go to work every day that you hate, unless you love your job, that's, but if you hate your job and you go every day, it is a sacrifice because you are sacrificing a higher value, which is time with your family, whatever, for a lower value, which is money, It's a sacrifice. Now, if you value money more than your time, then that's not a sacrifice. It's that simple. So you got to understand, ask yourself, am I giving away something better for something worse? If I am, then I'm sacrificing. If spending time with your girlfriend is less important to you than grinding to make money and to win in life so you can get a better friend, then you're sacrificing. Spending time with your girlfriend is more important than pursuing your goals because she's that great, well, then you're not sacrificing. Just on to the next one. Set to the task at hand. Now, granted, if you are learning, that's not really struggle. You are engaged. If you love something and you're learning to do it, like learning to ride a bike, it's not a struggle. Instead, it's a learning curve. And what that does, when you change that, you flip that switch in your brain. And instead of seeing something beautiful as a struggle, you see it as a learning curve, as an opportunity to grow, that sort of thing, then it's a gift. I was at Burning Man in 2023. I fucking loved it. It was the best thing ever. It was one of the best experiences of my entire life. If you know anything about Burning Man 2023, it was muddy toward, like it was like Thursday night, everything shifted and it became muddy. Now, I enjoyed every single minute of that because I submitted to the experience. And so there were people that were struggling where I was thriving and we were in the same boat, okay? So struggle is what you perceive in the world when it comes to the challenges you face. So that's that. The third thing is, the third deadly sin is suffering. Never suffer. Never suffer. Pain is inevitable, okay? Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Always remember that. I have cut myself. I've been hurt. I've experienced a lot. I've stubbed my toes, all that stuff. I've been hurt emotionally. I've been all that. And, look, when someone hurts you emotionally, it's easy to point to them and be like, they are the fault. Well, go back to my video number 6 and go over intrinsic virtue and moral objectivity and transcendent self-awareness. I'm not going to go into that now. But suffering, if a girl breaks your heart or says something terrible about you, you ain't doing it in the bed, or you broke, or you're a loser or whatever, and it breaks your heart because you thought you trusted her. Well, okay, you can be hurt by that because it's painful. Ouch. Okay? Ouch. Let's all agree. Ouch. That hurts. But suffering is going back to it every freaking minute. Oh, she said this about me a year ago. What? You're still thinking about that? There are a lot of things I'm about to say that it includes profanity. I'm not going to say it right now because I'm trying to get more people to watch the show. But but suffering is optional. And look, I was in a wonderful experience, and a wonderful, beautiful, amazing human being told me, I was sitting down with her, and oh God, my life is so good. Anyway. So yeah, I was gonna sit down with her, and she said, listen, I was stressed out about something. I was like, I'm anxious about this and that. And she looked me in the eye and said, listen, you're choosing to do that to yourself. You don't have to think about that. I was like, oh shit, you're right. And I had an opportunity to be like, but you're not hearing my points. You need to create space for my trauma. No, I'm gonna say some profanity. Fuck your trauma. Okay, if you're still thinking about it, you're still living through it, obviously get therapy, get support, go to somebody that can fix your brain or whatever. But I'm saying, like, fuck all that. Okay? Suffering is optional. Pain is inevitable. You're going to experience pain. If you are breathing and living, you're going to experience pain. I guarantee you that. But suffering is optional. What is suffering? Suffering is delving into the pain, letting it take over your experience, and not moving on. And I have learned that, man. There's so many things I could go back into. There are times when I'm just living my life, doing my thing, and then a thought will come into my head, and I'll remember something that happened to me that someone did that I felt a certain way about. Okay? They may have been an asshole, they may have not have been an asshole, but I felt a certain way about it. Okay? The way I felt about it was all between me and God and me. It had nothing to do with them. They were an asshole. I had them in my life. I could have just excluded them from my life. It was that simple. But there are times when sometimes those thoughts will come back and I'm like, oh, that bitch did this and blah, 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 blah. And then it's just like, well, now I'm suffering. It happened last year. It happened a year and a half, 2 years ago. Forget about it. Suffering is optional. Okay? Savages suffer because it's part of the culture. You can't help them. All right. The fourth deadly sin is scarcity, which leads to poverty, destitution, all the bad things, right? Trafficking of children and women, all that. That's scarcity. It also leads to incels and men that are frustrated sexually and all that other stuff. Scarcity. It's the idea that there's not enough, you know? And we live in a world where it's obviously there's more than enough. There's more than enough love. There's more than enough beauty. There's more than enough friends. There's more than enough food. There's more than enough everything, all the time, everywhere. And the idea of scarcity is a sinful idea. And poverty is like the punishment of that scarcity idea. And we have to overcome that, you know? But we're not alone. We have Jesus Christ and we have the Holy Spirit. And we have God the Father to help us overcome that sin. So scarcity and poverty is the devil. It is Satan. It is evil. And scarcity is the fourth deadly sin. Okay? And that's all I really have to say about that. Scarcity, you know, if you experience scarcity, you know what I'm talking about. It's worse than death. You know, it's an awful thing. All right. And the fifth deadly sin is stupidity. Stupidity is all of us have a functioning brain and we're not using it. Lions, and I love to use the lion, but even, let me use another animal, the tiger. Really different. Tigers from birth are not stupid. They are so fucking smart. They are so smart because they use the brain God gave them. They use the brain God gave them to do the thing that God made them to do. Humans, on the other hand, I don't find stupidity in any other species except for humans and dogs and sometimes cats. Cats are really smart, but dogs are like stupid. Not all of them, but I love dogs. But I'm telling you, they're just, yeah. So stupidity is another seven deadly sin. And I should start cutting this down. Shit, I'm at 18 minutes. I'm spending a lot of time on the sins. So I'm going to get out of here. Stupidity is just when you don't use your brain as God designed you to use it. That does not mean that you don't have a degree or that you didn't go to school, you're not educated, you've not been through the academic indoctrination system. It is not stupidity. Stupidity is, you know, look, something inside of you is telling you don't walk down that alley. You walk down that alley, you get bopped on the head and whatever bad things happen to you, and you're like, oh, I'm such a victim. Okay, that's stupidity. Stupidity is when you don't use your God-given brain, your God-given intelligence. That's all. And society is kind of run by stupidity because there are pundits and there's experts. Like Candace Owens said, if they came out with a study tomorrow and said water is bad for you, 50% of people would die of thirst. That's stupidity. Okay, letting someone else decide your fate when you can decide your fate, especially when you have freedom to do it. You have liberty to do it in the greatest nation on earth. And the last two are slavery and then savagery. So slavery is always a choice, and people don't like to think about that. But as a child, I was lucky and fortunate. I'm Marian, so I actually know my history. So I'm not African American or black, but I actually know my history. And I come from people that did not put up with bullshit. Okay, as far as slavery is concerned, they didn't fight for their liberty. They just were free. I mean, my great whatever grandfather, one of them from Nigeria, and Nigeria is not in Africa for your information. But that's another video for another day. He was from Nigeria, and he came here on a boat. He must have fallen for one of those Nigerian scams. That's how he got on that boat. But anyway, he got on a boat, and when he got here, he was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna work a plantation." And he just didn't, and he just like literally lived near a riverbank and sold fish and made things, and never was a slave. Okay, so he just decided that's not my fate. Not gonna do that. Anybody that thinks slavery is like not an option, like you just don't get you just stuck. When they pull out the bullwhip, you just got to do what they say. No, you don't. You got a functioning brain, and you're a functioning human. You got any type of intelligence. You don't. You wait to the right time, and you can, listen. One of the reasons this everybody wants to praise Abraham Lincoln. He was all right. I actually liked him, but um, there were so many slave uprisings in the South among Irish, Scottish, and Negroes. Okay, and so one of the reasons that this was one of the things that was brought up in the abolition movement and in all that was that, look, we're losing property because these slaves were uprising, kind of like people did during Ferguson. People they doing that back then, and they were like, we're losing property and we're losing lives by keeping these people working on these operations, and they just don't want to do it. The worst slave uprisings were in the worst situations, like where people were actually getting beaten. Not every slave plantation beat people. They were just, the whole Roots thing was a terrible story. It's a terrible movie because it's a lie. Just look it up. Look up Harold Corlander, the man who actually wrote Roots, who was robbed by Alex Haley. So anyway, slave is always a choice, and any use of slavery, forcing people to work, or being a slave is a deadly sin. Okay, and then the last deadly sin is savagery. If you live in a savage society, you're going to be a slave. You're going to be stupid. You're going to be scared, suffering, struggling, and sacrificing. Savagery is the sin of all sins. And in the last 70 years, the United States has moved away from its God-given beauty, perfection as a nation, and has fallen into savagery. And you can see that really among Mauryan people like myself, not like myself, I'm saying Mauryan people that look like I look. Communities of people like myself that look like me had fathers, had homes, had husbands, wives, all that stuff, and they had jobs and communities and businesses and churches and schools and education, and they were contributing members of American society that made this one of the greatest nations on earth. And we were exceptional people. And then we started buying into suffering and struggle and stupidity and scarcity and sacrifice and slavery and savagery. And so when you see that in communities, you start to see a downward slope. You start to see the increase of savagery. All right, we're at 23 minutes. That's all I have to say about that. I really devoted more time to that than I wanted to, but I hope it's something that you were able to benefit from. I talk very fast, and I'm just kind of just talking nonstop in these videos because I want to get this out here. I'm going to post it on other social media platforms, and make sure you don't sacrifice yourself for anyone because that's stupid, and it's struggling, and it's suffering, it's scarcity, it's slavery, and it's savagery. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. We're going to talk about evidence-based compassion, because this is the last video in the series. Evidence-based compassion.